What if the person you trusted most was never real? What if everything you believed about yourself, your memories, your identity, your sanity, was carefully, deliberately constructed? This is the story of Elena Marsh, a woman who moved to a small town to get away from her past. But what she found there was a whole lot worse than anything she'd left behind. This is the story of the last mirror. The town of Ravenfield sat between two hills like a secret the rest of the world had agreed to forget. Population, 1,200. One grocery store, one church, one road in, and one road out. Elena pulled into town on a Tuesday evening in October, when the leaves had turned the color of dried blood and the wind smelled like something had been burning for a very long time. She'd rented a small cottage on the edge of town, one of those old places with creaking hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, and walls so thin you could hear the night breathing right outside. She'd come here to heal. 3 months earlier, Elena had suffered what her doctor called a dissociative episode. She'd woken up in her Chicago apartment with zero memory of the previous 48 hours. Her hands were caked with dirt. There was mud all over her shoes. And sitting right there on her kitchen table, a photograph she had absolutely no memory of taking. It was a photo of a little girl, standing alone in an open field. Elena didn't recognize her, but the girl was staring straight into the camera and smiling. Her therapist, Dr. Hale, had told her she needed rest, distance, somewhere quiet, with no noise, no crowds, no triggers. So Elena came to Ravenfield. On her first night, she got a fire going, poured herself a glass of wine, and told herself, "This is fine, you're fine, everything is fine." But then she glanced at the mirror above the fireplace, and in the reflection, she saw someone standing right behind her. She spun around, nobody there. She turned back to the mirror, nobody, just her, pale, shaking, completely alone. She brushed it off. "You're tired," she told herself. "That's all. You're just tired." But she didn't sleep that night, not even a little. The next morning, Elena met her neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Dole, who showed up with homemade bread and a smile that never quite made it all the way to her eyes. "So you're the one who rented the Marsh cottage," Mrs. Dole said. Elena blinked. "I'm sorry, the Marsh cottage." Mrs. Dole tilted her head. "That's what folks around here call it, named after the family that used to live there." She paused. "Your last name is Marsh, isn't it?" Something cold settled right in the center of Elena's chest. "Yeah, but that's just a coincidence." Mrs. Dole looked at her for a long moment. "Of course," she said quietly. "Of course it is." That afternoon, Elena walked into town. She stopped by the library, the pharmacy, the old church on the corner. Everyone was polite, friendly even. But everywhere she went, she picked up on something that just felt off. People recognized her, not the way you recognize a stranger's face from somewhere, the way you recognize someone you've been waiting on. The librarian looked up and said, "Oh, you're back. Good to see you." The pharmacist handed her a prescription bag, already filled, already labeled, Elena Marsh, with medication she had never once ordered. And the old man sitting on the bench outside the church looked up at her with glassy, wet eyes and whispered, "Lord have mercy. She looks just like her." Elena walked back to the cottage, with her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. She sat down, opened her laptop, and typed, "Marsh family, Ravenfield." The first result was a newspaper article, 11 years old. The headline read, "Tragedy in Ravenfield. Local woman vanishes. 6-year-old daughter found alone in field." Elena's hands went completely still. The daughter's name in the article was Elena. And the mother, the woman who had vanished without a trace, was named Sarah Marsh. Elena stared at the screen, mouth dry, mind spinning. Because Sarah Marsh was the name of her mother. The mother she had been told, her entire life, had died in a car accident when Elena was just a baby. That night, Elena called Dr. Hale. "I need the truth," she said. "About my mother. About what actually happened." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Elena," Dr. Hale said, choosing every word carefully. "We've been over this. Your mother passed away when you were very young. Your aunt stepped in and raised you. These feelings of confusion, they're part of your condition." "What condition?" Elena shot back. "You've never given it a name. You've never given me an actual diagnosis." Silence. "Elena, I really think you need to come back to the city. Tell me the truth." The line went dead. Elena sat in the quiet of the cottage, chest heaving. And that's when she noticed something she'd completely missed before. A small door at the far end of the hallway, tucked behind a curtain like someone had hoped nobody would ever look twice at it. She opened it. Behind the door, a narrow staircase dropping down into pure darkness. A basement. She pulled out her phone, flipped on the flashlight, and went down. The air hit her first. Damp stone, rotting wood, something old and closed off. But when she turned to the far wall, she stopped dead. Mirrors. Dozens of them. Every shape and size imaginable, stacked and leaned and nailed from floor to ceiling. And every single one of them had been flipped backwards, face to the wall, like somebody couldn't stand the thought of being seen. And taped to the back of the largest mirror, right in the center, was an envelope. Her name written on it in handwriting she'd never seen before. With shaking hands, she tore it open. Inside, one piece of paper, and on it, in that same unfamiliar handwriting, "Elena, don't trust your memories. Don't trust your doctor. The little girl in that photograph is you, and your mother didn't disappear. She was hidden. Come to the church. Midnight. Come alone. Someone who has been watching over you." Elena could have left. Any reasonable person would have packed a bag and driven straight back to Chicago. But she went to the church. It was 5 minutes to midnight when she pushed open that heavy wooden door and stepped inside. Candles flickered along the walls. The church was empty, except for one person sitting in the very front pew. An old woman. White hair. Shoulders that looked like they'd been carrying something heavy for a long, long time. She turned when she heard Elena's footsteps. And when Elena saw her face, the whole world seemed to tilt sideways underneath her, because she knew that face. Not from any memory, not from any photograph. She knew it from the mirror. It was her own face, 30 years older, but unmistakably, impossibly, hers. "Sit down, sweetheart," the old woman said softly. "There's a lot to explain, and we don't have a whole lot of time." The woman's name was Sarah Marsh, Elena's mother, very much alive. And what she said next turned Elena's entire life inside out. 11 years ago, Sarah had stumbled onto something horrifying about Dr. Hale. Not just Elena's therapist, but the man who had been controlling their family for decades. Dr. Hale wasn't just a therapist. He ran a private facility built around one specific terrifying practice: memory reconstruction. A cocktail of drugs, isolation, and psychological manipulation, carefully engineered to wipe out a person's real memories and replace them with ones he'd built from scratch. Sarah had been one of his very first patients. When she started to break through, when the real memories began coming back, she'd tried to run. But Hale had already taken Elena, and he'd made himself crystal clear. If Sarah went to the police or said one word to anyone, Elena would be next. So Sarah had done the only thing she could do. She'd come to Ravenfield, and she'd waited, and watched, and protected her daughter from a distance for 11 years. She was the one who'd rented the cottage in Elena's name. She was the one who'd placed that photograph on the kitchen table, a picture she'd taken the very last day she'd ever held her daughter, knowing that one day the truth would start pushing its way back through. "Those episodes you keep having," Sarah said quietly. "Those 48 hours you can't account for. That's your real memory fighting to get out. Every time it starts breaking through, Hale brings you back in and patches everything back over." Elena felt the floor drop out from under her. Cold, hollow, gutted. "The pills at the pharmacy. That's how he keeps you in line," Sarah said. "Don't ever take them again." Elena sat in the silence for a long moment. Then she looked up. "How do I stop him?" Sarah reached into her coat and set a small hard drive on the pew between them. "It's all right here," she said. "Names, dates, recordings. More than enough to put him away for good." Her voice cracked. "I've been waiting such a long time to hand this to you." Elena walked out of that church into the cold November air with the hard drive in her hand and 11 years' worth of stolen memories pressing up against the inside of her skull like a dam about to break. She drove straight through the night, back to Chicago, back to the life she now understood had been engineered, from the ground up, to keep her confused, dependent, and small. She went directly to a journalist she trusted, a woman she'd known in college, from before Dr. Hale, before all of it. By morning, the story was live. By noon, Dr. Hale was in handcuffs. By evening, 3 more victims had already come forward. And Elena sat alone at a corner table in a coffee shop, holding a mug of tea with both hands, watching the city move outside the window like it had no idea what had just changed. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Mom. She'd added the contact at 3 in the morning, hands shaking, tears running down her face. She answered. "You safe?" Sarah asked. "Yeah," Elena said. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, maybe for the first time in her entire life, she actually believed it. She was safe. She was real. And those mirrors down in that Ravenfield basement? She drove back the following week and turned every last one of them around to face forward, because she was done hiding from her own reflection.